Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan Maiden.
But what's more impressive to me about the
Case Thornton.
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Chris Dowhouse.
Get him, Chase.
And Adam.
No,
LaRue.
not necessarily, but it's again the same.
Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
All right, let's move on to the running backs. Let's talk actual fantasy relevancy. Bijan Robinson. He's a top 3 running back, according to everybody. I got him at number 1 overall. I'm going to get into why that is in just a second, and I'm going to preface that with a few things. Chase has got him at 3. So, Chase, I kind of tagged you here because I want to know who do you have at 2?
I've got Breece Hall at number 2, but I've been a Breece Hall guy.
You said that last week. Yeah.
Yep. I'm a Breece Hall guy. I think
Okay.
both of them are. I think both of them actually have. I think it's very similar for the two of them for how they can perform this season. But I'm a Breece Hall guy. So.
Okay. I'm not going to argue too much. Breece Hall is my number 3, so I'm not going to argue with you there too much. I do think Bijan is more of a lock to get more of a workload, and he's not dependent as much as Kirk Cousins is coming off the Achilles injury, just like Rodgers is. As much as we can kill Atlanta for Penix, and I'll be the first in line to do it. I do know the step off from Cousins to Penix, even though he's a rookie, is less significant than the step off to Rodgers for Tyrod for half a game until he gets hurt, and then down to the third string in Huntley. So I think from even a backup standpoint, I like Bijan a little bit more as a safety net goes as far as getting quarterbacks who are older off the injury bug. And I guess that's where I'll take it in from the segue here of why I got Bijan number 1. If you're for all the people out there gonna be like, you're crazy, Christian McCaffrey's number 1. I'm not here to argue with you. All right. This is not a you're wrong, I'm right, Bijan's 1, McCaffrey's 2. This is not what this is. It's a 1A, 1B situation. This is a Bijan getting a Rams coordinator coming off a year in which they had tremendous success featuring one guy. An offense traditionally, it does better when they feature one guy because they're less predictable off of it. And they like to do it that way when they have the opportunity to do so. So now you put him in a situation where he's younger. He might be getting in his own words, a Christian McCaffrey level type workload, both in the rushing and in the passing game. And the big part of that, if this offense clicks the way I think a lot of us expect it to click, at least be better, there will be more legitimate scoring opportunities that he will not be ceding to Tyler Algier that we have to worry about here. And McCaffrey being a little bit older, being paid now, being on a team that is just focused on the Super Bowl, making a little bit of a deeper run. I do think Shanahan's going to find some ways, not saying McCaffrey's going to be losing a significant workload, but I do think he's going to find some ways to take the ball out of his hands a little more often than what we had seen previously too. Plus, I think Bijan's a special back. So I got Bijan at number 1. Chris, go ahead and chime in with your Bijan thoughts.
Well, you had Bijan 1 last year, so you're sticking to your what you did last year. So I see that you love Bijan Robinson.
I'm saying I was a year early. That's what I'm saying.
Yep. I like it, Dan. My concern is the touchdown potential. Look, you talk about the system, so the opportunity is absolutely going to be there for him to be the way Kyron Williams did last year. If you want to highlight what the guys can do, we also saw what else could happen is people like Devin Singletary and even Pierce rushed for 4 touchdowns combined last year for the Texans offense. It's not a guarantee that you're automatically going to have that success running the ball. It's not a guarantee that Bijan Robinson is going to, hit the ground running. I always be more involved than he was last year. I know everybody wanted to kill Tyler Algier last year. Tyler Algier is not going to die, guys. He's still going to be involved in someone in the offense. So he's still going to have some kind of a role. So I just think there's a little bit of things here or there where I can't just, feel as confident, Dan, as you do. Christian McCaffrey, I do think he's going to have his touchdown and his workload cut back a little bit. But similar to Raheem Mostert last year, he can just fall into the end zone 18 times, catch a couple balls, and be just fine. Still be, QB run RB1. Where I think Bijan has to show me that he can do that. So I see, I see excitement for Bijan. I see the opportunities in Atlanta offense in general, and I was beating the drum for Atlanta offense the last 2 years. But I'm a little bit more cautious. I'm excited what's coming, but I also think there's transition, guys. Coaching doesn't just automatically take its step. I know the Houston gave everybody excitement last year of how they kind of just all of a sudden hit the ground running, but it doesn't guarantee.
What was that?
You're going to be more cautious the year they get rid of Arthur Smith? That's not the year to be more cautious. Can you guys not hear me at all?
No, I'm not. I'm more cautious in the sense that I'm not going to make the leap that these guys are all of a sudden, just going to be world beaters. Last year, I was more confident they were going to be good, and was disappointed when we got everybody basically. But I think this year, I still think they're going to be way better than they were last year. I just don't necessarily think they're going to, I can't make the leap that everybody's all of a sudden going to be has arrived now.
Well, and the thing about Bijan, like, listen, my mantra, FAS, forget Arthur Smith, but for all the belly aching that we all did about how Bijan was used last year, he still was 9th in the league in running back touches. He had 300 touches last season. You mentioned Tyler Algier earlier, Chris. Tyler Algier is not going away. Tyler Algier's workload decreased by a whole 17 touches, by 1 touch a game, basically, between his rookie season and last season. Okay. And he had essentially the same, almost the exact same usage that he had the year before. So all of the usage that Bijan got was basically carved out of other places in this offense. I get that, but I'm saying that, like, how many more touches, how many more opportunities is Bijan going to get? The entire thing of Bijan being a ton better, being a number one guy, is that the offense has to, and I think, again, we all expect it to, but if the offense has to get better so that he has more opportunities in the red zone. Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson both were only terrible last year. And they weren't terrible, but the only reason they didn't score more than they were is because they were outside the top 30 in red zone attempts, not just goal line, just inside the 20 period, because their teams simply weren't there. The team has to get better at finishing drives, getting down inside the red zone, and then I think Bijan will have more points. But Tyler Algier was their goal line back. That's not to say he gets the same usage this season, but he's not going away. And so, when a guy already has 300 touches in a season, he's not all of a sudden going to get 100 more opportunities, regardless of what the offense is, regardless of what his, who's calling the plays. For Bijan to be number one, does he have the talent? Yes. Is the possibility there for the offense to be better? Yes. But I think we can't just assume that all of a sudden this entire offense is going to go like gangbusters. I mean, this is a guy that was already second in the league in running back targets. This team wants to throw more. They have said, Zach Robinson has said, the entire team says they want to throw more. He already had 86 targets last season. How many more targets can he get? Okay. And if he gets more rushes, well, great. He gets more rushes, but you're talking about him making up 150 points just about on what we've seen McCaffrey do, and not just do last year, but we've seen McCaffrey be McCaffrey now when he's healthy for his entire career. I mean, if we're arguing about whether a guy is running back 2, 3, or 1.
Not
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not an argument against Christian McCaffrey, but efficiency. First of all, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to expect him to get 25 to 50 more total opportunities than he had last season. Remember, this is a guy who was 32nd in red zone attempts last year because Tyler Algier got only 2 less touches than he did in the red zone because of the system. All right, so you're looking at Kyron Williams and what he did and what they were able to utilize out of him. I think when they look at Bijan, they see a much more talented back that they plan on using very, very similar. Is it a stretch to say Bijan is going to get 70% of the team carries? No, it's not. Is it a stretch to say he's going to get 13% of the team targets? No, it's not. And that puts him right on range for 325 to 350 touches. I have no caution whatsoever this team's going to score more than the 7th worst scoring team last year in Atlanta. So all those things together, I have no concerns whatsoever that at the very least, he's going to be competing for that number 1 spot and being way better positions with the touches he does get to be more efficient than what we saw last season. Something to take in mind here, Bijan was one of the best in yards created because he had to be. I mean, he wasn't put in no position to do anything with the ball. It was all him, what he got. And even though he doesn't have all the highlight plays that we would expect a player of his talent to have, that's how bad it was around him. He makes it look easy. You watch those games in Atlanta, he makes it look easy time and time again. I know I'm having a few little problems on my microphone. Get that worked out here. Let's talk a little Rashad White. So, Chris, you're the lowest on us with Rashad White. You got him at 19. Now, Rashad White's a guy, I think, from a volume standpoint, not much has changed. I don't look at Bucky Irving, at least, as a threat to actually be doing anything. So, we think he's going to get most of the volume. Why do you think he slips a little bit from what we saw last season?
Well, I think there's some things that we're taking out of last season. You talked about the numbers that, it's being skewed. So Rashad White, when it comes to a points per game basis, was not the RB7 that everybody's excited about. He finished in the top 20. So I look at some of the things that we saw the year before. You saw a guy who was highly inefficient in running attack, a guy who was highly inefficient in running attack last year again. And then we go, okay, we're relying on the passing attack. He had 9 touchdowns, which seemed a little bit normal for him because he wasn't super efficient doing so. He just kind of had opportunity to keep trying to run it in. Chase Edmonds isn't anything special. Bucky Irving isn't anything special. But they're more than Sean Tucker, who was an undrafted free agent that they had last year. So there will be competition for those people in the backfield. There will be other guys being rotated in there. And Liam Cohen has showed a propensity in his career to actually utilize multiple running backs when he was in the Rams and also when he was in Kentucky and previous as well. So I do have some concerns that this guy's not going to get the same amount of touches he got last year. He talked about efficiency. That's the opposite of where Rashad White is when in a rushing attack. He's not efficient. He's not a great goal line back as big as he is. Doesn't have good vision. And pass catching, well, Bucky Irvin's a good pass catcher. So is Chase Edmonds. So if he loses any of that, I have genuine concerns. Now I'm still putting him in as guy I think is an RB2 option for your teams. So I think I'm being pretty conservative because, like I said, on the points per basis last year, he was RB19.
Well, where are you seeing RB19 at? Because I got him at RB14 on a points per game basis.
That's where I got him
for the season or per game.
Per game. Points
per game
basis.
Half point PPR. Half point PPR per game. Yep.
4, 5, 6, 7,
yeah, I have him at RB14.
11, 12, 13. I'm sorry.
So
right.
while
I wrote. Okay, I wrote. Sorry, I wrote the 4 instead of a 9. Sorry, so 14.
Yeah.
But what do I have? What do I have? What do I have Rashad White as again?
You have him at RB19 in your rankings.
Okay, so yeah. So I think he's going to. I think we saw the high we were going to get from Rashad White last year, RB14. So I think the regression is coming, so we'll be finished RB19 this year. Yes.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure we're clear for the people out there who are giving out faulty stats there. He was RB14 on a points per game basis. Look, I don't disagree with what you were saying there as far as him being a rusher. He's not that great as a rusher. I think it's kind of been a knock on him when he was coming out of college is that we kind of knew he wasn't going to be that great of a runner. He's never been that efficient. He doesn't break a lot of tackles after contact. But I don't think he's losing any of the passing down work because he was legitimately, even by the metrics, elite as a pass catcher. I mean, 13th in yards per route run, 2nd in routes run, 13th in target share for the team, 13% target share on the team. So all those things add up to me. Rashad White's not losing that job. Chase Edmonds, Bucky Irving, that's not competition in my mind. And I know I was lower than most when it came to Bucky Irving coming out of college. Take that as you will. But this team, part of the regression is that I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to be able to take as many deep shots this year. He was number 1 in deep ball pass attempts. I do think this offense is going to condense in some ways closer to the line of scrimmage, which may play out to even be more beneficial to a Rashad White when it comes to volume. There's too much being made about the Bucs offensive line improving, like Graham Barton being there. I don't think that makes them suddenly a great offensive line in the interior. So there's a lot of people out there who have Rashad White as a top 10 who expect him to be better efficiency with the carries. I'm not really projecting that either. Chris, what are you going to say?
I was just going to say that they're going to have regression offensively. The guy rushed for 6 touchdowns last year. So I don't know. That's a big part. He had 9 total. Well, that's a big part. If you knock that down to 6 or 7 touchdowns, where are you going to have Rashad White be this year? Not rushing for 1,000 yards, isn't catching him for, he's a solid, efficient pass catcher, but he's not catching him for like 100 yards a game or anything like that. So what are you really going to get out of Rashad White above what I'm saying?
Well, I think that actually plays my point. 6 touchdowns is not a lot of touchdowns. 9 total. That's not 9 total, but with 3 receptions with the guy who receives the ball all the time, and they don't have a tight end that they have to throw the ball to. Pretty much Mike
numbers for running backs last year, Dan. What are running backs average for catching touchdowns?
I understand. If you let me get through it real fast, I'll break down to you why I think that is replicable. Again, because you're talking about a team that outside of Mike Evans doesn't have a lot of red zone weapons. It's not a team that has a tight end who commands the ball inside the red zone. Chris Godwin's never been a big red zone guy. Last year was ridiculously low, but he's never been a big red zone guy himself. So it all pans out to, I don't see the touchdowns being an issue. And I think if anything, it shows you that as long as his passing work stays involved, he's got an RB2 floor regardless of the touchdowns being scored anyway. And I think that's the thing about Rashad White. I think he has a high floor. I don't think he quite as ceiling as some other people in the ADP, but I don't think he does have a high floor with that. Let's talk a little Alvin Kamara. Chase, you got him at 20. Oh, I forgot. This is my bad. This is a showdown between the two of you. All right, let's get into this one. So Alvin Kamara, we got I'm right smack in the middle of you guys, so this is going to be fun to judge. Chase, you got him at 10. Chris, you got him at 20. So we are talking a full tier difference between the two of you. Chris saying he's a low-end RB1. Chase saying he's a low-end RB2. So, Chase, you go ahead first. Why are you not as big on Alvin Kamara this season?
I'm not as big on Alvin Kamara just because I think that he is showing that he's in decline. Now, did he lose a ton of speed no, he wasn't. And he wasn't terrible. He was actually pretty good last season. He ended up running back 14 overall, running back 5 points per game. I mean, this dude can still play football. Okay. But I talked earlier about how I'm not crazy about his quarterback. We kind of just know what we're getting. They still have a terrible offensive line. By the way, they are installing a new offense, and it's a new offense from Clint Kubiak that could be great for Alvin Kamara. But Kendre Miller is still there. Kendre Miller is 22 years old. Kendre Miller only played 8 games last season. Jamal Williams, we can all say what we want about Jamal Williams, but Jamal Williams is still there. Jamal Williams is still can be a factor in short yardage situations. Okay. Listen, he's going to be 29 in 3 weeks. He's never really been through an entire season. I'll repeat it. I've said it before. I'm not in the business of predicting injuries, but this is a guy who literally has missed time every single year of his career. Listen, this was his lowest, his fewest rush yards in his career last season, his second fewest receiving yards last season. It was his lowest yards per catch that he's had in his entire career last season. He had a long run, and I've heard this hammered away, but it bears repeating. He had a long run of 17 yards last season. For a guy whose game is supposed to be built on explosivity and had been built on explosivity until last season, for a long run of 17 yards, that I find that a little bit concerning. Listen, he's still a good football player. He's still the number 1 on this team. I don't think that Kendre Miller all of a sudden becomes the number 1 on this team, flat out, hands down. I think he can eat into that workload a little bit more. I think that Alvin Kamara is losing a step and is declining in his career. And so for that reason, I'm not willing to bet on him being a running back 1 in fantasy anymore. I'm going to bet on him being a running back 2, which is where I have him ranked at 20. I have not done my numerical projections yet. He may bump up a bit when I do my numerical projections in my rankings, but I don't see him being a running back 1 anymore at this point in his career. It's just not what I see him as.
All right, Chris, go ahead. Why do you still see him as a top 12 running back?
Because he was top 5 per game last year, as Chase alluded to, and he was so terrible, as Chase was talking about, that, and he didn't play, and he only played a certain amount of games. I think he still finished RB14 despite,
he did
missing a good portion of the season to begin with. Guy that I see clearly as my eyes is still the most talented, if not this, maybe we'll argue the second most talented person on the offense itself. I mean, I don't know who else New Orleans is going to build his offense around. They're trying to feature more than Alvin Kamara. Maybe Chris Olave is that guy, but I haven't necessarily seen that's the, taking that away from Alvin Kamara. Can they use other running backs in the running attack? Sure. That's happened in the past before, but we still see Alvin Kamara still be able to be the guy who could catch the ball. We know one thing, Derek Carr's a check down machine. So talk about Rashad White having a safe floor. Alvin Kamara has a safe floor because he's going to catch the ball out of the backfield. He's the second most talented pass catcher, and probably going to be the primary, option outside Chris Olave in that passing attack. You look at Clint Kubiak, a system that fits him to a T. We saw Dalvin Cook utilized, well in passing attack for the Vikings when Clint Kubiak was there. Ability to kind of move around the running backs different ways, but also get back to doing his own runs. And overall, Clint Kubiak's actually got a clue of what he's doing. This offense in New Orleans for the last, since Sean Payton, even towards the end of Sean Payton's tenure, was just, horrendously uncreative, boring to watch. I think you're going to see a lot more motion. You're going to see a team that has a lot more pace. All those things, I think, Alvin Kamara and a full offseason where he can commit himself. He's got a lot of money. He's got something to play for in his futures going forward as well. I like Alvin Kamara as a top 10 option.
Okay. A lot of good points by both you guys. Like I said, I'm right smack in the middle. I'm right at RB15. So this is all going to come down to the argument for me. And I'm going to give the slight edge to Chris on this one. Just because you laid out really good points on the fact that, his efficiency was bad on the ground. And yet he was still RB5 at a points per game basis. It's just showing you, again, it's kind of like the Rashad White conversation, Chris, you brought it up. You're going to get the base floor in the passing game. Now, I'm not willing to move him up to 10 because I do think Kendre Miller is going to factor in a bit more this season. Jamal Williams is done. Anybody wants to try to tell you Jamal Williams is still there and that's the reason? No. He's done. He's toast. But I do think Kendre Miller is a talented back. And I do he's going to get more work and it fits the system from Coop quite well. See him a little bit more on first and second downs. That's why I'm not willing to go quite as high as 10. But I think the 4 is right there as a high-level RB2. And I do think this is the best system Kamara has been in quite some time. Pete Carmichael was not a good play caller. Not a good play caller at all. This is a zone run scheme. It's perfect for Kamara's gliding. He doesn't have to just play gap in between the tackle. Now, he definitely took a step down. That's why the Kendrick Miller is going to work in more there. I mean, you laid it out there. 3.8 yards in true yards per carry, 40th in breakaway run rate, and he had his second lowest yard mark in his career. His second lowest yards after contact mark, in his career. His passing game was still elite. That's ultimately what this boils down to here. His passing game was still elite, and he's in a good system. So I do give the edge to Chris. I do
like him though. I do like him at his ADP though. His ADP is above where I above where I have him ranked, but I do like him at ADP 17.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. His ADP is sitting there at 17, the lower end RB2. Okay, so let's go from that showdown to this showdown, if we can. It's Jonathan Brooks. We kind of got into it a little bit already earlier, so we're going to get into the full argument of it now. I have Jonathan Brooks at 29. Chase, you have him at RB 38. So why are you so low? And Chris is a little more towards you, but in the middle. Why are you so low on Jonathan Brooks there at 38?
Well, for one, he's a rookie. And yes, rookie running backs can hit the ground literally running, to coin a phrase. But he's coming off that injury. I want to see how he recovers from that injury. Now, he says he's fine and he thinks he should be. They're still kind of babying him a little bit in their OTAs and that, but he says he should be fine for the season. That's great. I want to see that first before I go ahead and take too big a chance on him. We know that Canales wants to run. We know that he wants to, and we know that he really is big on Jonathan Brooks. But Hubbard improved a lot. Last year, Hubbard looked like he can actually play in this league. Okay. He has worked really hard to improve his pass blocking so that he's not a detriment in any phase of the game. I don't think that you need to rush the rookie in order to do some of the things that they want to do this season. They're not going anywhere this season, to be dead honest with anybody. I really just don't, even in a winnable NFC South, I don't think the Carolina Panthers are going anywhere. They don't have to pound the living hell out of Jonathan Brooks to get him the kind of volume that it's going to take for him to be a fantasy star. Now, you don't have him ranked as a fantasy star. You've got him ranked as a running back 3. I've got him ranked as a high-end running back 4. Just because I'm not necessarily sure that they don't work him in slowly and that affects his overall output. Now, late season, I might like Jonathan Brooks a hell of a lot. He might be a great guy to try and target before the trade deadline hits. If they are working him in slowly, you might be able to get that. He'd be a guy that I would be looking at in DFS whenever he does crack that starting lineup and establishes himself as the number 1 guy. But for where he's going right now, and for where you have to take him, he's going right around guys like Raheem Mostert, like Tajay Spears, like heck. Other positions, Jake Ferguson, who's a viable starting tight, who's a good starting tight end, who's going at tight end 9 right now. You don't have to jump on guys at that position either. Christian Watson. There are just other guys who I would rather take at other positions right now. And so I'm not high on Jonathan Brooks. Now I may move him up again when I do my numerical rankings. I just started on those, but I just don't see him getting enough volume early enough in the season to warrant him being anything more than a low 3, high 4 to right now. He's got the talent to, but I want to see how he comes off that injury. I want to see how they use him, and I want to wait till he cracks the starting lineup before I buy in fully.
So I'll tell you where you're right. This is not a pick for September. This is not, and that's why I have him at RB29. This is not a pick for September. I'm not expecting Jonathan Brooks to go Donkey Kong in the first, maybe 6 weeks of the season.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to be hard from the pecking order. Miles Sanders is only on this team because of his contract. They would have moved on already anyway. This regime has no ties to Chuba Hubbard whatsoever. Jonathan Brooks was their draft pick. He's going to be the one they want to get in there. As far as the injury goes, from everything I understand, it's very similar to the Breece Hall injury in the sense that it was the ACL. Not much else got damaged. Therefore, a recovery is not only expected to be speedier, but he would expect to get his speed burst back faster than, say, what happened to Javonte Williams, for instance. Which is why, again, I say half of the season, I'm kind of optimistic. He has a better 3-down skill set than Chuba Hubbard does. He has better vision. He's better after contact. And that's being the big key here in Dave Canales' offense. He wants guys who are going to be better after contact. He loved it when they had Kenneth Walker in there. I know he wasn't the play caller, but that's the thing, is what he wants to emulate here with Jonathan Brooks, with his skill set and what he can do. The other thing I want to factor in is where he is going. You kind of mentioned a little bit about guys you would want to draft, just looking at from a running back standpoint. Now, right now, ADP, the two things I will tell you off the jump that are ridiculous is that Brooks is one spot ahead of Raheem Mostert, or 2 spots ahead of Tony Pollard. That's dumb. Those guys, and I have those guys ranked well ahead of Jonathan Brooks as top 24 running backs. That's ridiculous. No. But the other guys that I'm looking at, Devin Singletary, Tajay Spears, Brian Robinson, Trey Benson, Blake Corum. Those are the list of the next 5 guys after Jonathan Brooks. He has more of a clear-cut runway as far as being a starter earlier than Trey Benson and Blake Corum, which need an injury to happen in order for them to become stars. It might happen, but they need an injury to happen. Brian Robinson, we kind of know he's going to be limited severely, especially now they signed Austin Eckler as a pass catcher. So all he's giving you is first, second downs, maybe goal line work. How much does Washington put him in position to score remains to be seen. Devin Singletary, we've never seen him be the starter for an entire season. And I like what he can do, but that's not a great situation to the Giants. And this is not a special talent that we're talking about either. Tajay Spears, I mentioned this a ton of time before. I like Tajay Spears, but he's not better than Tony Pollard, and he's not going to get more workload than him. And they're going to be very similar in eating into each other. I'd rather have the shot that Jim Brooks takes over this backfield in the second half of the season and what that potential ceiling could be as a top 24 player at that point, more so than the other guys going in that range. I'd rather take that chance on him than those other guys. So that for me is why he becomes a mid-level RB3, let's say. Chris, you judge it.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of, err with Chase on this one. Dan, I hear your points, but the question for me is, you're talking about a guy, the upside for the end of the season. What's the upside in this offense? How many touchdowns is he going to score? How many yards is he going to rush for? Is this offense going to be getting first downs for this guy to be involved consistently? I just have a lot of questions whether he has the value that what Chase talked about is other guys on the board that I do like a lot more. And something even the running backs you named, but Devin Singletary still finished pretty decently last year towards the season. So could he be some of these other guys? I like the upside opportunity, but James Brooks to me is the guy that I'm a little cautious as Chase talking about. And I got to see it first. A guy coming out who has not played a snap in the NFL, whether it's been practice or anything. I know we have ideas, reports of what he's going to do, but I still need to see it. So to me, this is not a guy I can consider go too high on. I think Chase is a little bit safer, and I stick with Chase on this one.
0 RB or hero RB move for the year. Grab Jonathan Brooks, and then 2 rounds later, grab Jerome Ford. You'll have a starting running back all damn year because Jerome Ford's going to be the dude in Cleveland for the early going.
I think it's Foreman. So
and Brooks. I know you don't, but then Brooks takes over where he is for the second half of the year. You got a starting running back for the whole year, but you had to spend late round picks on him. So,
Chris, just to kind of fire back a little bit, Chuba Hubbard was the RB24 on points per game basis from week 5 on. So I'm saying
he was the entire offense, right? Was he the entire offense basically towards the end of the season last year? That they commit to running the ball all the time. And Dave Canales, you talk about his running attack. Rashad White did what in the running attack last year? So I don't know.
He got a ton of volume. Did he not get a ton of volume? I don't.
He got a ton of volume, dude. He had 900 yards rushing. He only got a ton of volume.
He got a ton of usage.
He got a ton of usage. Yes. Snaps percentages.
Yeah.
He had 9% snap percentage. But I don't think you think he's going to get a 90% snap percentage.
First of all, I don't know when I said Jonathan Brooks was going to be the entire offense. I said Chuba Hubbard was an RB24 on a points per game basis, making Jonathan Brooks worth
Chuba
it.
Hubbard was the entire offense by that point towards the season. But I understand what you're saying. Do you think they can?
Well, that's not how you said it. But at any rate, what I'm saying is that he has a top 24 starting running back capability, and you're drafting him as an RB3, who, because of his 3-down skill set, and I do think he's more talented than Hubbard, has maybe even a little bit more of a ceiling of what you saw out of Hubbard last year, and therefore has much more value than the other guys you're taking in that range to start off the season. That's being more the point here. That even as bad as that offense was, the Carolina last year, they still able to produce a starting capable running back.
Because
and I think they are a little bit better than what they were a season ago.
My question to
But
Dan
that's
is,
all I'm banking on. What are we talking about here?
Because he had no competition for that volume. That's what I'm talking about. You talk about Deontay Johnson being this offense. You talk about Jameis Sanders being this offense. This team was passing for like $125 a game towards the end of the season. They were just a run-oriented running team. Chuba Hubbard was the offense, basically. So that's where I'm curious. Do you think that they're going to commit to that much usage? If that's the case, then it's absolutely a possible top 24. I just think there's other mouths to feed in this offense, and there's other backs in the backfield that aren't going away necessarily. That I don't see he has that clear cut, upside that you're looking for. That if he gets 15 carries for 40 yards, what do we care?
The only thing you could argue is that Hubbard may stick around longer than maybe I'm projecting him to do so. I'm not really worried about Hubbard being an actual significant factor. Rashad White had 272 carries last year. He had plenty of volume. This is not an issue of volume for Jonathan Brooks.
They literally had nobody else in Tampa Bay, and they had Sean Tucker, an undrafted free agent, backing him up. That's what I'm just saying. I know what you believe. You hate Tyler Algier. You hate the backup running backs. You think the guys are going to get all the touches. But I just don't necessarily subscribe to that same theory. I think these other guys will be involved. They picked up Rashad Penny, whether he's involved or not. They picked up the running back. So they keep adding backs. I think there's an intention.
There are a lot of bodies in that room. There are a lot of bodies in that room, yes.
Everyone has 4 to 5 running backs in their depth chart. I don't think it's a stretch to say Jonathan Brooks gets 68% of the carry starting week 6 when he's fully ready to go. That's not a stretch. Guess what? That's where Hubbard was last season. Hubbard can still be involved. Your Algier point is erroneous because Bijan can get 74% of the work and still have Algier involved for 25% of it, which is more than enough for a backup running back, by the way. I'm not ostracizing these guys where they have to never touch the ball for the volume to work out here. Let's keep it on pace with the math here a little bit before we start putting words in my mouth.
You're talking about the whole season, Dan. So I'm looking at a running back situation that you're going with Chuba Hubbard for a stretch for towards the end of the season for about 8 games.
It was from week 5 on. Week 5, that's a 3/4 of the season we're talking about. That's not just second half of the year.
When you can quantify, look, I can't argue strongly, but if you can tell me how much Carolina committed to running the ball last year, and you're going to say they're running the ball that much this year from that week, that just as consistently they ran the ball from that week 5 on last year, because we watched that offense basically neuter itself and become we just hand the ball to our running back and we try not to screw it up.
And so that's what you do when you have a crappy quarterback. I don't think the quarterback situation has changed. Do you?
We had this conversation earlier. You guys like Deontay Johnson. You like Sanders. You think they have more talent.
Yeah, the weapons got better.
I think there's going to be more passing attempts than there was last year. That I will say for Bryce Young. I'll go on record. It'll be more pass attempts this year than there were last year for Bryce Young. Absolutely.
Really? Because they had 586 pass attempts last year. They had 445 rushing attempts. This was not a split that was crazy for the Carolina Panthers to repeat. In fact, that's actually along the line right with the percentage tendencies of Dave Canales. So I'm not really sure where the volume has to change all that significantly.
Because I need to see the touchdowns. I need to see how do you get to him being a RB option that he's consistently doing what Rashad White did last year? You were giving me the Tampa Bay option.
I didn't say Rashad White. I said Hubbard. There's a big difference. I'm talking about a low-end RB2 compared to a guy who's a high-end RB2. There's a huge difference between the two. He doesn't have Rashad White.
Touches with who?
I don't think Jonathan Brooks is going to split touches in a committee-like fashion with Chuba Hubbard once he gets going.
And who was the second passing receiver on the team for Carolina last year?
You got to give me a second to... I actually do have it right in front of me. Give me 1 minute, please. And it was Jonathan Mingo. And then DJ Chark. And then you finally get the Chuba Hubbard after that. Okay, so it's not a stretch.
Do you think
no matter how you break it down, the volume is not a stretch?
There's going to be more attempts to the other receivers they have in that room now than DJ Chark and Jonathan Mingo.
Let's see. Jonathan Mingo had 85 targets. DJ Chark had 66. Adam Thielen had 137. I could easily see the 137 going to Deontay with 85 going to Thielen. And Xavier Legette, Jonathan Mingo splitting the remaining. It doesn't change. I don't know where you see the drop
and Hubbard
off. It doesn't change.
Because there's more mouths. Chase, I mean,
you keep throwing Hubbard out there like he's going to get more than 5% target share.
I'm just saying he's going to touch the ball.
I'm saying mathematically, I don't understand where you're coming from at and why it's such a stretch what they did volume-wise and what an offense could be better or with Dave Canales or whatever the case may be. But volume-wise, the Panthers weren't that bad. This wasn't a team that had the least amount of touches in the league. They didn't. So all volume-wise across the board, it breaks down perfectly fine. And if anything, it would be a little bit more of an improvement because they'll probably run a faster pace offense with Dave Canales than they did last season. So I'm not understanding the volume argument.
I know that we just spent this whole time arguing between ourselves that that I was right in my draft position and you were right in your draft position over Jonathan Brooks. I actually tend to agree with a lot of the points that you're making here, Dan. I think again, like I've said a little bit before on this show, it comes down to a little bit of our philosophy and what are we looking for and when we are ranking, how are we ranking? Are we ranking for draft or what is our draft philosophies? Those kinds of things. The point you made about him taking over in the second half of the season or at some point in the season and having that volume available to him, I can completely see that happen. I can completely see that happening, which is why I said, I like the guy and I think he's got the talent to do that. I'm just pumping the brakes a little bit in terms of jumping all in on him until I see it and until I see what and when the usage occurs. Like I said, I'll be in on him on DFS all day long, but I don't know that I want to draft him right now at that.